Hey you there. You getting tired of me bugging you yet? Well, just hang on, we got a little more to go.
I've been fighting with Fred for space on this stool of mine for the last that whole video. Basically, he was behind me, pushing against me. He had his back up against that cushion, and all four of his white fuzzy paws were against my back, trying to push me off the chair. And as soon as I got up, he went and laid down like this, and he's in all his glory now because he won. He owns this chair. Again, I'm staff. I am nothing but staff. This guy is the boss. And so I'm going to have to stand while I finish this work now. Oh, well, Fred, I hope you're happy. Yeah, Fred. Yeah, he's ignoring me now. Okay, back to work. The screw has a star washer on it. It goes through, bearing, shorter bushing. Okay, all like this. You can see the witness marks from the star washers. Drop the bushings down onto the screws. Drop the motor with its bearing down onto this whole assembly. There we go. If you over tighten them, you risk bending or mangling things up. So you just want to sensibly tight, not crazy tight. It's not overly tight. Now where are we? We have the bottom bearing plate with that little socket, that ball socket bushing in there. Star washer under the head of each of these screws. You've got the smaller bushing, which is sandwiched between the laminated plates here and that bearing plate. Okay, screws go through those. Then you got the longer bushing here that's sandwiched between this laminated plate set and the top bearing plate. And then you tighten down these two nuts onto there. No star washers under these. These just lock this down. You don't want to over tighten them. And you check to make sure the motor still spins freely. So we're good to go. We can go ahead and mount this plate on top, and this whole assembly will be finished. Alright, they're all cinched down. This is all sandwich. Motor turns very freely. So this should be great. See no reason why this motor shouldn't just kick some butt now. Never ever do anything like this unless you're, number one, using an isolation transformer, and one that is fused or has a breaker on it, by the way. And number two, when you're handling, when you have the ability to come into contact with both sides of line power very easily like that, and you could have one in each hand, you want to also protect yourself by wearing some heavy gloves. And I know it sounds silly and a little over, maybe over protective of yourself, but it really is smart, because a 120 volt won't hurt you bad if it just goes through your finger, but if it goes through your heart, it's going to kill you dead. So you don't want to have it in one lead in one hand and the other lead in the other hand, because the only path it's going to have is going to go straight through your heart. So you want to make sure, guys, that when you're horsing around with power, AC or DC, that number one, you only have one hand on the thing at a time. And just to be sure, number two, you wear gloves when you can. All right? Keep them where you can see them so you know what they're doing too. I teach a lot of lockout tagout training in the factory setting. And the thing I always tell people is, unless you can see that plug right in front of you, you don't know what's happening with it. And so it's true at the workbench too. I wear a good heavy set of leather gloves. That's sufficient with 120 volt, because under those I wear some neoprene gloves too. I wear those just for comfort. It helps my skin, but they provide a small amount of insulation as well. Alright, I'm going to run this through the variac so I can bring the power up and watch it speed up. Okay, variac is on. Let's get a little closer to that motor. Okay, let's bring it up slowly. Let's watch the current. See it wanting to turn. There it goes, guys. All right. We have a good motor. It's at 90 volts now. Turning smooth as silk. 110 volts. Isn't that sweet? Look at that thing whir away. Just look at it go, man. All right. That's how you test a motor. You do it safely. Now, real quick, because I haven't touched it, but now I'm going to have to touch it. I'll put my gloves on. I'm going to operate that switch and see. All right. Power's on. Motor is not turning. All right. Switch did what it's supposed to do. Let's turn it on now. There we go. I think we're good, man. Beautiful. We have ourselves a good motor, guys, and a good switch. I'm glad I cleaned that switch because I think it was going to be funky on me. It is time to get started on the bottom, on the mechanism of this Zenith record player. So I'm going to do what I always do on these things, and that's clean, clean, clean. Better open a window. It's going to get cold in here, guys, so put on your jacket. Alright, I'll start here by first cleaning this, what I call the locomotive wheel. Just get it good and clean. It's basically a wheel within a wheel. And, you know, of course that gear, and the gear shouldn't have been lubricated much anyway, so there isn't much on that. A lot of this stuff here is just sort of cursory cleaning, getting the general grease layer off of things. But as you start to turn it, you start to see as it goes around, you know, what's happening in there and where the pivot points are. And those are the places that you'll have to hit a little harder, and you make mental notes of what those are as you're going around the machine. And so as I start to find little places where things pivot, like this tone arm pivot right here, I start to get those pivot points clean with Q-tip. Really what you do is you squirt a little lacquer thinner on the end of a Q-tip and you start to work it, and you wind up wiping things clean. Pretty soon you go through a lot of Q-tips as you go around the record player. And often I'll find places where I've missed as I vacuumed, and I'll go through and vacuum the whole thing, but I'll find stuff underneath especially that I've got to get loose and get out of there with the vacuum cleaner. It's important to have a good vacuum cleaner when you're doing this kind of work, because a lot of what you see is really dusty stuff. And a particular interest in this machine is this tone arm pivot, because I wind up having trouble with the tone arm pivot later on in the restore. And in the end, it really affected how the machine is going to be used. Might as well go ahead and, yikes, might as well go ahead and get this one off too. There we go. This is B number 2. I wonder if I can take this bugger off and just stop having to horse with it for the time being. I don't know. Might not be that easy. I seem to have misplaced my small drift, so I'll have to use this. There we go. Now, separate this cable from the tone arm. Okay, now I can deal with this. I can put the cartridge in it the whole 9 yards while it's out of there. When I put this back in, this spring has to come up here, and that provides the lifting to provide the right tracking force. See, anything I put here is going to be outside of the pivot, so it's going to be a little bit tough to balance this, but I might not need to with a light cartridge in there. It might be okay. This isn't that heavy, and that spring actually provides a lot. I might have too little tracking force, and in that case I can put weights in here, and I have lots of space along here to kind of tinker with the right amount of weight, because I'm going to be shooting for about, it's 78s only, so I'm going to be shooting for about 8 grams. This should be easy. It looks like a simple 1/2-inch mount, this little adapter. Alright, so that makes everything on this much easier to deal with. I don't have to worry about breaking anything. You saw me cleaning it. I probably added most of it out of it, but I will leave enough in so you can see that I basically vacuumed all the dust bunnies out of this whole thing. I cleaned off this gear and this cam here on this side with cleaner, and I'm going to go through and clean up the rest of it with lacquer thinner, and anything interesting I'll point out to you guys. Alright, I have lots of little places I need to lubricate. There is a pin under this big wheel. There's actually a cam under here. And there's a pin in here that rides in this cam. And it won't hurt to have some lubricant in there. Boy, this sure does. I think this is made by Seaberg. I gotta find that out. I need to go on Radio Museum and see what they say. They'll often tell you what kind of phonograph it is, and then download what I can. I need to upload some things. It's been a while, and the thing about Radio Museum is you can download all the stuff you need as long as you upload too. You get credits for your uploads, and it's pretty good arrangement. I really like it, and I've used the information on Radio Museum now for a couple of years, and I've put a lot of information up there too. I've got an entire airline service manual that most of the schematics are hard to find in, and I'm going to put that up soon. So what I'm doing here, if you have one of these, you'll know there's a channel back here that the tone arm pivot lever has a pin that rides in that channel. And that channel is cast into the top side of this gear right here. And so when the gear turns, what happens is that causes the tone arm to swing back and forth. Okay, and all it is the pin that's on the end of that lever that's in here, that's that's attached to the tone arm, rides in this channel on the top side of this little gear or big gear. And that doesn't seem to be a cam follower, like a spinning cam follower on the end of the pin either. It just sort of rides in it. I don't know, so it's got to need lubricant. I can't imagine it wouldn't. Now, a lot of this lubricant that I'm putting on, I will wipe off the excess, but I need to get it spread. And the trouble with this is at some point this lubricant I'm putting on will dry out and get sticky. There's no way around it. This pin that's on this lever for the tone arm seems to be pretty critical, because there's a couple channels here that apparently rides in depending on the status of the record changer. You can see this lever swinging back and forth as I move this gear. That is the tone arm. That would be the tone arm moving. Yeah, this thing was probably last greased the day it was built. The grease is old and it's rock hard. Look at that. See that? It's old, dried up, hardened grease that will only make matters worse if I don't get it out of there now. Okay, see that rides in that channel there. It's that channel that I'm trying to get as clean as I can. So you have to run it through the cycle many times and watch what the various parts do. And in doing so, then you clean and lubricate the parts that move that aren't in a situation where they can't be lubricated. Operate it slowly by hand, and you can see what it's supposed to do. One little drop of lubricant at a time is sufficient, guys. This bottle of Singer sewing machine oil will last me a year. And trust me, I do a lot of record players. And I could use a syringe, except they have their own issues, because then if you don't withdraw them each time you use them, you wind up half your oil dripping out of the syringe. This works really well, and it's very easy to control. Oh yeah, that's sweet. Doesn't take a lot. And wipe off the excess because it attracts dust. You don't want that. I see old Buzz has got a new video up. Philco, he called it an 89. So I'll be eager to watch that. Buzz produces some of my very favorite videos. I think he is really one of the best YouTube video makers out there in the radio world, because Buzz makes it fun, yet he makes it informative, but he never seems like a know-it-all. I like that about Buzz. He's a sharp guy. Okay, so I've lubricated this pivot right here, so it pivots smoothly, and the up and down here is smooth. And there's a cam follower on the bottom side of this spring right here that rides on this gear. I put a very small amount of lubricant on that, and that seemed to lessen a lot of the drag I was feeling, so that's something to watch out for. I'm going to clean this right here and then lubricate that. That looks like it has had lubricant there that has dried up. So what you do when you have that situation is you clean out the old dried up stuff, and you put in some new stuff that will someday be old dried up stuff. Okay, so that's connected to a switch. Don't know which one it was, but it isn't as easy to move the other way. Okay, so there we go. So that's the middle switch, which appears to be the 12 or 10-inch record size. So that's cool. Simple enough. Tiny bit of grease on the cam, a little detent for it. Okay, that's easier. Very cool. A tube of Singer sewing machine grease ought to last you a long time. Let's run this through a cycle or two, see what moves. Notice that this inside section here moves within this outside section. I don't know if I should lubricate that or not. I'm thinking the tiniest bit can't hurt. Kind of like forcing that wheel bearing grease again. Just kind of give it a push down into there, and then let the operation do the rest. Alright, that should be enough. The thing is slowly beginning to move more smoothly and easily. See how that does that? Well, sometimes it doesn't want to return all the way. See, that's one of those times, see? And what that does is sometimes that'll cause this to jam. But what I want is for that to return all the way. I think this is at the core of the problem with the jamming. Although I looked at this for literally a couple of hours and I couldn't see where it was happening. It was driving me nuts. And finally I came to the conclusion, erroneously, that it was because it was sitting on its backside like this.
But the truth is, whatever is happening is not happening every time it goes around, and I could never identify the problem. So I think there's something that's worn out that just occasionally wasn't going the way it was supposed to go.
I always put a drop on there, let it spread for a bit, and then I wipe it off. And then I work it a few times, and it should get smoother. And sure enough, it is. Okay. It's getting smoother little by little. Check this. Now, here is that spot right here where the platter, which has a gear on it, is not engaging. And then when you hit the reject, it kicks that gear over just a little bit to cause it to engage. And then this here will, it looks like it's this looks here like some kind of return. And it looks like it could use some lube. And it feels like it's sticky, like dirty. So, one thing to do, first you kind of bathe it with the lacquer thinner and you work it. What that does is that loosens up all the nasty grease that's in there. And then every now and then you give it some more lacquer thinner, and it'll tend to wash that lacquer thinner out. It takes a few iterations and it gets messy. See that? There we go. That would have been a problem, that thing not returning like that. Now the problem is, as soon as this lacquer thinner dries, it's likely to get stiff again. So what you do then, the next step, is to put, and this time you put a little more oil on it, put a couple drops of oil on there, and it'll mix with that lacquer thinner that's in there. And then when that lacquer thinner dries, it'll still be there. And you use the lacquer thinner to kind of carry the oil into the machine. You see what I'm doing? Now, the lacquer thinner will dry out of there, but the oil will remain. And then you've lubricated it in places that you can't otherwise get to. You work the mixture in, and then that lacquer thinner eventually dries up. But you saw this when I was first doing it. It was stiff and would not move. See how sweet that is? I'll do the same thing with this. This looks a little bit stiff, not terrible. Now, a lot of times they built them so loosely so they didn't need lubrication. That was done on purpose. And it's working smoothly enough that I can feel comfortable putting in lubricant. It doesn't feel like it's been over lubricated. So it was probably lubricated with oil and not grease. But it has gotten a whole lot smoother. Now there's a small cam follower on this switch. That thing is turning, but those are classic where people over lubricate them with grease and they get sticky and they don't roll and then they wear out. So the thing to do with that guy is to put a drop of oil and walk away. Okay. I hope you can see that. Now watch that. Now watch this. It's going around where it's very close to the changer cycle being complete is when it seems to operate that. See that? There's a little detent and it hits it. It hits it. It hits it right there. Okay, so watch it again. So here's the beginning of the change cycle. Hit the reject, goes around. This is operating, dropping a record. It's going around, going around. Okay, those little fingers that hold the record are swinging back into place now so they can support the rest of the record stack. And then you come to this little point, this little bump. It forces that cam follower away, and what it does is, I'm not sure if it opens or closes that switch. I have to look more closely at it, but it operates this switch right here. Okay? And then it kind of has a settle in point right there, and that is the point at which this is stopped. So I imagine that closes the switch to the signal, because this is a signal cable right here. So when you reject a record, it comes off of that little bump where the cam follower sits. Okay, then boom, it closes this switch, so it probably is grounding out the signal. Okay, but it might be opening the switch and just opening the signal, but I think it's probably grounding it out. So turns this so you don't get hum. So it's turning this here. Signal is grounded out while the record's changing, so all the record changer noise is not coming through the amplifier because the signal cable has been isolated from it. Right? The change cycle is coming to an end. Lifts that switch, so that switch opens. It's no longer, the signal is no longer grounded. This wheel comes to a stop, and now you can have signal again. So this is a signal. This is a silencing switch for the record change cycle. That's all it is. All right, so I'm going to look at this spindle right here, and then I'm done under here. Now, on most record players, this is part of the platter assembly, but on this one it's not. The platter is all by itself. These four little tangs must be the things that that little reject is engaging. I'm going to try my lacquer thinner trick on this gear shaft just a little bit. See, that wasn't too bad. I have had record changers that the ones that I don't that take the time are the multi-speed. They take a lot of time because there's an added dimension of the speed controls. Great, done with the bottom. And oh my goodness, look at that. Okay, I got to do this side now. First things first, you know how I feel about icky. Let's make this not icky anymore. That's easy to do. I vacuumed it already. Let's clean the dust off, because what usually attracted that dust in the first place is excess grease. So I don't mind using lacquer thinner to do that. If I weren't going to polish this paint, I would worry about that, but I'm going to, because this lacquer thinner might dull the paint a little bit, but it's certainly not going to hurt the paint, and I'm going to polish it when I'm done. I want to stay off of this little panel.
Hey, I'm sorry guys, my camera battery died, and so I lost a lot of the polishing video, or that would have been. All I did was I cleaned it with lacquer thinner, and then I polished the whole thing with that 3M polishing compound, that extra cut compound that I've shown in other videos. It is a 3M part number. It's meant for cars, and it's called extra cut polishing compound. You'll see it, it's in a big black bottle. I've got it in some other videos, and I'll try to remember to put a link, or not a link, I'll try to remember to put the name of it in the description of this video.
Okay, remember there was a clip on each one of these. Okay, motor is installed. It's actually pretty good. And I polished all the other components. I'm just going to buff the wax off here real quick. So these have some wear on them, but that's all right. They're not supposed to be new. Okay, this one mounts on the one by the controls. Polished up the little button. Yikes, it's very slippery now. Yep, it's stepped inside, so it only goes down so far on this shaft. Okay. I'm not sure what kind of plastic it is, but it's pretty tough stuff. And I even polished the top of the screw. I hope he doesn't play 78s with this. Other than maybe occasionally for a demo, because 78s are so fragile and these things treat them so roughly. It's just not a smart thing to do, but it's his record player, and then they'll be his records. Polish up the little button. It's got some cool colors in it. I don't know what kind of, it's like Catalin, I think. But anyway, I've always liked the way these look. They kind of look like bone or something. When you're cleaning them, you think those are like stains you have to get out, but they're not. That's it. You can see in there that it's in the material. Really cool. Now the way these are set up is they operate they're sitting down on these pegs, but they're designed so that if you want to run this manually, just lift those up, move them out of the way. See? Lift them up, move it out of the way, and it stays out of the way. And that's fine. See how they move together? See the spindle moving? One more. Alright, look at that. You see that, guys? You hit the reject and then you hit the reject, and then when it reaches the end of the cycle, it spins. Watch. Very nice. I think this is going to work. That's a beautiful thing, man. I couldn't have done that. I really can't be that stupid. Yeah, I think I can be that stupid. I remember what a pain that was to get out of there. I'm not sure that's what I want to do. I think I want to attach it up here. I want to make sure that I take one last shot to clean the drive pinion on the motor itself, the little drive surface, the friction surface on the motor itself. I'm going to try this just to see if it'll spin the platter. So here's the platter. You go ahead and drop the platter on. Usually on this style of idler wheel, you gotta kind of have to push it out of the way as you're coming down with the platter. Otherwise, you never get the platter on. Okay, so now find the idler wheel. I'm gonna push it out of the way. There it is. Okay, that's mounted. Now, let's try it. What can I lose here? I can see if it works. All right, it's plugged into the isolation transformer. All right, let's turn it on. Hey, check it out, man. That's very cool. All right, let me try. Right now it's set to auto. Let me try the reject. Now watch these two guys right here, because right now the tone arm is off of here. So but you can also watch this because it should pivot. Uh-oh, I just did that with the tone arm. Wow, that's interesting. So that would be what happens when the tone arm reaches the end of the record. Let's hit the reject button. Excellent, excellent, excellent. So that thing is working perfectly. Now let's see, let's put it on manual. Manual does nothing, right? Nothing. But let's see what happens when it gets to the end of the record. Okay, it's totally manual. That's how I play my record players, by the way. End of the record. That's so cool, man. Alright, that's where I'm at right now on the record player. Almost done with it. So let me set the needle, set the tone arm up, get it mounted, and then I'll be done with the record player. Okay, I've already polished the tone arm. It's going to stay nice for a very long time. And I'm going to get ready to install this crystal cartridge replacement kit that I get at Voice of Music. This is a neat kit in that it uses a P226. It's a flip cartridge, but it's got 78 on both sides. Alright, what I have done now is put on the crystal cartridge replacement kit. You can see that, the side view of it right there. There it is under the tone arm. Later on, I'm going to take a little bit of cement and glue that cable right there so it stays out of the way. And same thing with this here. Okay, but beyond that, it's in pretty good shape. Basically, it's waxed, ready to play. Let's turn it on, see what happens here. Ooh, I guess I must have hit the reject button. Okay, there it goes. Alright, now we've played a record. Reach the end. Goes to the next record. Now, the last record on some of these old record players would play over and over. This one does not return to the tone arm rest position after the last record. It just keeps playing. It just keeps cycling through onto the last record. That I've seen that before on other machines. Let's run it through a couple more. Perfect. Okay. I can call this thing good. I don't do automatic. I'm not going to break my records, and this will break records. At the very minimum, someone should put a cork mat on this before playing it in automatic. So that's the record changer. It's all set to go. And I can get on to finishing the radio chassis now. Okay, guys, that's it for the record changer.
Okay guys, once again, thanks for hanging in. I know it was a long slog, but we finally got through the record changer. The rest of it is a downhill run. It's a piece of cake, man. So I'll see you next for the final video on the ZENITH 7S685. All right, guys, thanks. This is Michael from Salt Lake City. That's all for now.